It's late at night, my lighting isn't great, and nonetheless, we're going to be talking about the unique classes of Final Fantasy Tactics Ivalice Chronicles, in particular, how they rank against each other in Tactician mode. My name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman, and welcome back. Hello everyone, if you enjoy what I do, including ongoing coverage of turn-based strategy RPGs such as Final Fantasy Tactics The Ivalice Chronicles, then a like on this video and a subscription to the channel would be very much appreciated. Thank you so much. Also, of course, I have to acknowledge I'm in a different location. I'm handling all of the major family emergencies that I've been handling, and so sound, lighting, etc. might not be quite up to my normal standard. Please forgive me for that. But I wanted to take the chance nonetheless to continue our series of tier lists for TIC so we can get all of that out there and get all of my thoughts in a row and see what you guys have to say about the whole thing. As always, of course, I will welcome any and all constructive, shall we say, feedback at the end of the video or during the video, whenever you choose to post it, but we will be going through and ranking all of the characters nonetheless. Now, I do have on my other screen here my previous tier list for the pre-TIC version of the game, and we will, of course, be removing Balthier and Lusso from this tier list because they don't exist in TIC. Fortunately, unfortunately, that's for you to decide. We also will be discussing Ramza and Byblos, who I accidentally left out of the previous version of the tier list, so it should be a little bit more complete overall. Now you'll notice, as we have here on the screen, we do still have the Cid tier, something that we had in the previous version as well, and that is where good old Cidolfus Cid, where is he? There he is, my fine man, will be going this time around as well. We'll talk about exactly what that means and why in just a second, but I wanted to outline it immediately because, as always, Cid is an absolute game breaker and outstrips everyone and anyone in the game. We do then have our normal S through C tiers. There's really no D tier unique characters here. Everyone has at least some use, and the worst generic jobs are still going to be worse than even the most mediocre unique jobs and characters, so it feels right that we only have C tier. As always, don't take this too seriously. It is only a tier list, not something more dramatic than that, and while I am open to discussion, I will be a little bit miffed, shall we say, if you get overly hostile in the comments. Starting off, we do have Agrias, and Agrias is a very interesting case, as the way damage balancing has been handled and different things like that, she's not as strong as she used to be. And I kind of think that winds up putting her in B tier. It's a little bit of a shame because obviously Holy Knight is very, very good. And earlier on in the game, when she's your only real unique character that you have access to, and she is very good at her job, she can still feel very powerful. But the stats of Holy Knight, the growth rates that it has, the skill set that it has, it's a little bit harder to justify it all the time, especially when things like status effects, opportunities to immediately, if not temporarily, remove opponents from the battlefield. It's tough, man. Raw damage is not the only go-to anymore, especially in Tactician mode. So yes, Agrias is still quite good, but I don't think she's as much of a top dog as she was before, and I did have her in A tier last time, so I think she's bumped down a little bit here. She doesn't have quite the raw oomph that I would expect her to, but she can still hit. She can still hit, and that's pretty good. Byblos coming up here next. Now, this is an interesting fellow. We left him off the tier list last time, mainly because I just, again, forgot about him, and that's partially because you get him at the literal end of the game. Right? To get Byblos, you have to go into the deep dungeon, you have to get all the way to level 10, you have to clear the battle of Sagittarius, and then, if he survives, you'll recruit him. And for all that effort, he's okay. He can cast some status effects, deal some damage. For an end-of-game reward, it's pretty mediocre. And then, like, you're still at the end of the game. You have literally nothing left to do. Maybe you've cleared the deep dungeon or Midlight's Deep, however you want to call it, prior to doing the final few missions of the game. But even then, if you can clear Midlight's Deep in the deep dungeon, you're not going to have any issues with the last few maps of the game in Orban Monastery. And either way, you've got better options to clear those maps than Byblos. So At the end of the day, he's cool. I like that you're able to get him. He's a fun monster recruit with some unique abilities, but he's pretty trash. I can't lie. I think he has to go in C tier, which is unfortunate, but I mean, what can you do? He's just not that good. Now, Beowulf. Beowulf has had a big glow up here, and not due to any particular benefits of his own, although, like some of the other unique characters, he does come with a bunch of very powerful unique skills, which in things like challenge runs, speed runs, no grind challenges, etc., he can be extremely strong, but as far as his base kit is concerned, it's completely unchanged. What has changed is the way Tactician makes you play, and really the way TIC makes you play in general, honestly, with the rebalancing. And that means that Beowulf is very, very strong. I think he's a very easy, not A tier, S tier option. Just the ability to, at range, say, become a chicken, if their brave is low enough. Become petrified. Drain, especially on Lucavi, who have massively inflated HP pools. Put any other status effect on stuff. It's very, very powerful. And while he doesn't have the AoE that some other generic options have, just being able to pick a priority target and say, you don't get to do anything anymore. It's so nice. It's so, so good. So I think Beowulf, especially on Tactician mode, maybe potentially even more so on Tactician mode, is an extremely powerful contender. He can wield very good gear, he's got great abilities to mitigate very dangerous enemies, and he can stand up for himself in the process, which is awesome. He's a knight and an oracle, or mystic, put together, and it's awesome. Far, far more so than in previous versions of the game, where damage was all you really cared about. Now, speaking of damage and being something that you primarily care about, he can also do some status effect stuff, but Cloud. Cloud was an interesting option. Cloud I had pretty low in B tier before, which for as far as unique characters are concerned is not great. I think Cloud is a lot better now. One, because the Materia Blade Plus exists, which massively boosts the amount of damage that his overall limit effects do, but also because the charge time of all abilities across the board has been reduced. So now Cloud is actually able to do a lot more and cast a lot more limit breaks much more quickly than he used to be able to do, while dealing more damage in the process, not being stuck with the very mediocre normal Materia Blade. And I think that means he's overall pretty much A tier character. Granted, he loses a little bit of a benefit from previously being the only male character that could equip ribbons and berets and the like. Now anyone can equip anything like that, perfumes, ribbons, etc. But even so, just the fact that his abilities are so much easier to use, you don't need to have swiftness equipped. You can use other options for support abilities while still having the versatility of gear that Cloud has. He's pretty solid, man. I like him a lot. I haven't had the opportunity to use him quite as much as I would like, but just the ability to get his abilities to cast so much more quickly and have a greater AoE, have a greater variety of effects than something like a Holy Knight, it makes him pretty damn solid, and I'd say he's absolutely better than Agrius. So I think A tier, probably where he belongs as a soldier first class, is a good option. I am very happy with how they kind of modified how he works. He's much more usable now. Granted, if you're using the Materia Blade Plus on someone else for a build, a little bit harder to justify, but if you just want to look at what Cloud does and what he needs to function, what is unique to him, it's pretty damn good. Now, Merrick. Unfortunately, Merrick is not great. He was our only C tier option before, and he hasn't changed. The thing about Merrick and Rafa is they really want to be in scenarios where you can minimize the amount of RNG that's going into how much damage they're able to deal and how likely they are to be able to hit their targets, right? Now, the issue with Merrick, his damage has always kind of been ass. And while I haven't crunched the exact numbers, the changes that were made for the War of the Lions, I don't think were really matched by the equivalent changes that were done for TIC. So that means while enemies have much higher health thresholds and are generally tougher, you don't quite have the same equivalence of increased casts and increased damage and likelihood to hit that Merrick and Rafa had before. That means that, well, yes, Merrick and Rafa are able to wield staves or staffs, I guess, that are able to deal damage based on magic attack power, and that can make them decent melee bruisers. And in certain specific scenarios, you can dump a ton of damage into targets with their Heaven or Hell skills. It's still not great. And overall, Merrick's damage output is still going to be worse than Rafa's in most scenarios. So if you're willing to put up with that sort of RNG, very specific positioning type of skill set, Rafa's still going to be the better option in a skill set that just isn't that good. So unfortunately, I think Merrick is still going to be relegated to C tier, and nothing has really changed for him in that regard. Now this is a disappointing one, Meliadul. I think Meliadul is C tier now. I had her in S tier. It's so sad. But Meliadul has unfortunately had a little bit of a downgrade compared to War of the Lions. Because now, if you're using her Divine Knight abilities to crush a particular target for equipment, if there's no equipment in that slot, you can still deal damage, which is an improvement over the PS1 version, but it only deals half damage, as opposed to bonus damage if there's no equipment in that slot. This is literally just a downgrade from War of the Lions. Straight up. You have just lost damage here. Is it an improvement over that PS1 version? Absolutely. Because at least it doesn't just whiff if you try to crush Helm and there's no Helm to crush. It means you can deal damage to monsters, but you're just taking a damage penalty for no reason. And the majority of the time, that means that other characters of similar types, like the other Holy Knights, yes, Meliadul is a Divine Knight, but yeah, they kind of fall into the same-ish categories. You're just losing out. You've got the same equipment options as Agrias. Your stats and your growths aren't really any meaningful difference compared to, say, Agrias, let alone Orlando. Like, what are you supposed to do, man? What are you supposed to do? It's extremely disappointing. I love Meliadul. She's still very useful if you're going to be fighting opponents that are human and have armor and things like that, to be able to destroy targeted pieces while also dealing good damage to them. But once you get outside of that realm, it's a total no-go. Moving on from armor and weapon breaking to devastation of the ability to do literally anything, we have Mustadio. And Mustadio occupies a very interesting position. Mustadio is basically Beowulf Light in this version of the game, as the ability to prevent enemies from moving, as well as preventing enemies from taking actions alone as a machinist, is very good. The ability to wield guns is also extremely powerful. However, again, due to especially Tactician mode balancing, changing HP values and the like, base level guns not as useful as they used to be in terms of the guaranteed damage output that they're going to have, though magical guns can still be very good if you have a good faith score. As far as Mustadio himself is concerned with the machinist class, though, I think I gotta put him higher than he was. So I previously had him at, where did my tier list go here? Here we go. He was in B tier before. And I would argue the ability to just selectively remove the ability to move or take actions from an enemy, that's better than Agrias. Especially once you get to higher HP thresholds. Like, being able to look a dangerous enemy in the eye and say, I can't kill you right now, but I can keep you from killing me or my friends, is very good. Whereas, you know, Agrias can walk up as a B tier, shall we say, be like, all right, here's 150 damage on the Hallowed Bolt. Cool. Enemy might have 650 health and then still just nuke you. Whereas Mustadio could say, no. You can't cast that spell. You can't use that ability. You can't deal that damage. And at a very significant range, nonetheless. I really do think he's actually probably a much better candidate for overall usage than some other raw damage characters are. I think it makes him pretty useful. He's not a particularly complex character. His unique job only has 3 skills to its name. But even just when fighting undead, being able to pick one thing and go, petrified, gone, for the entire fight. It is literally a one-hit kill from 8-tile range, potentially. He's very good. I think he's a lot better due to the balancing of TIC, especially on Tactician, than he was in previous versions of the game. And I've always been happy to use him whenever I've had the opportunity to. Very strong character. Now here we have Ramza. Ramza is an interesting contender. This is a tough one because, again, Ramza's now Divine Knight job is still just Super Squire. It hasn't changed in that regard. He can wield all of the different ability. Well, he can wield all of the most important equipment types, things like knight swords, heavy armor, clothes, etc. by the end of the game. And he does have a wide range of abilities to buff himself and his allies, and that can be extremely powerful. Is it as devastating as things like Beowulf, or as damaging as things like Cid? No, there's going to be better options in that regard, but as an all-rounder, he's pretty alright, so I think we're going to put him solidly in B tier. Much like with Agrias, he doesn't have any guaranteed way to instantly remove something as a threat, unless you're just sitting there stacking up shoutcasts, which, news alert, not something you're going to be doing in normal gameplay, alright? Might get a couple casts off, but by that point, you're going to be trying to deal damage, you're going to be using your secondary job abilities, you're going to be doing different things like that. If you're at the point where you're sitting in a corner, spamming shout for 15 turns like it's an episode of DBZ, you're not in normal gameplay conditions, and that's generally what I try to look at when we're talking about these tier lists. So, good, yes. Very strong all-rounder, and I think that makes Ramza a lot more useful than characters like Meliadul that have much more niche scenarios, or Merrick, for example. He's not going to blow anyone away, but you're certainly happy to have him on the team, and compared to any other generic that's doing just that type of sort of frontline, damage, support type of deal, it's going to be a stronger option, no doubt. He's not the most complex character. He does have very strong meta use in terms of boosting your Brave stat for all of your characters. But, I mean, that's an entire campaign deal. He's just a utility piece in that regard. It's not going to help you overly in any moment-to-moment battle. So, very solid, though. Not going to pretend that he's not. Now, Rafa. I think Rafa's going to go solidly in C tier alongside her brother. And actually, just for the sake of cleanup, we're going to move Meliadul to the top of C tier. Thank you. Good lord. Just because what she does is better than these characters because it's more consistent. But Rafa, I mean, she should be above Merrick. She's probably even above Byblos because she does tend to deal more damage. It's the same issues as Merrick, right? You got the random chance issue. You've got the need for good terrain set up to be able to focus in on your multicast attacks at least a little bit more reliably. When you can perfectly maximize everything, she does still deal a shit ton of damage. But the scenarios where you're going to be able to actually maximize on that are few and far between, and in a lot of cases, it requires way more setup than it's actually worth. So, for pretty much the same reasons as Merrick, Rafa is going to be lower. She's just going to be a little bit higher in the tier because overall she's going to be dealing more damage. Otherwise, everything else applies. Finally, we're down to our last two here, and then we've got to talk about the illustrious Cid tier because no one else is going to be reaching those lofty heights. We have Race. Race is definitely an interesting case because she wants to support dragons. She has the various different dragon skills. She's got great base stats, issues with gear, comes with a bunch of skills, but again, anyone can get those skills with enough grinding. So, like, how much does that really help? It's not the biggest deal. But the raw stats that she has are very good. They are very good. Previously, I did have her in the bottom of B tier. I think that's where she's going to stay. She's not that versatile. The dragon skills are fine, but much like with Rafa and Merrick, the best one, you need to be able to maximize the effectiveness of RNG in your favor, and there's just going to be a lot of scenarios where that's not possible. So there's going to be a level of inconsistency there, and while she does have very good stats, on Tactician mode in TIC, those stats are far less important than the overall strategic versatility that you're otherwise able to bring to the table. So she doesn't really get any bumps there. She doesn't drop down any tiers either. She's still a very viable option if you want to use her, but she's overall fairly unremarkable. Even if you want to maximize her as a sort of like Beastmaster type character, there are good monsters, and especially some that have gotten some nice glow-ups in TIC, which look for our monster tier list that will be coming very soon after this video, but I don't think she's really changed all that much, unfortunately. Really, the only change that she might actually have could be over Worker 8 or Construct 8, who is our last character that we are going to be talking about. Now, I did not actually rate Worker 8 / Construct 8 previously because I kind of viewed them as a monster, because they are, but at the same time, they don't get a specific Beastmaster ability, and they're kind of a character. They're a weird option. In previous versions of the game, they were very, very nasty, as the raw HP and physical damage output that they had was very, very good, especially with the insane range that they could potentially bring to the table, instant KO abilities, etc. Now, though, because enemy HP is so much higher, especially in Tactician mode, they're not quite as good as they were before. Now, I would argue that they are still very, very good, but I think if they're going to go in B tier, which I feel is where they should be because they are very consistent, they're not as capable as some of our other characters. Now, I can see you asking yourself, Tom, isn't Agrias also basically just a damage dealer? She is. However, she does not damage herself in the process of using her abilities, unlike Construct 8. And while her range is lower than Construct 8's longest range ability, all of her abilities have range, as opposed to Construct 8 being limited to one ability. And if you really want to get into the weeds, even though we're largely just looking at the actual jobs that these characters have, Agrias can also use other jobs. She can equip gear. You can actually set her up to be able to do different things, and Construct 8 you can't. Granted, Construct 8 is immune to magic damage, but it is also unable to be healed by magic, so it's very limited in that regard. In previous versions of the game, where just raw physical damage output could trump a lot of things, not as much here. And I do think that brings Construct 8 down a fair bit. It has a lot of punch, and in a team that's set up to use it, you can use it very, very well, but it's not quite as overbearing as it was before. Now, finally, this is where we're going to talk about the Cid tier. And I was going to talk about it at the beginning of the video, but I wanted to get the rest of the characters set up to provide context for why the Cid tier exists, to prevent confusion. Cid exists in a category all his own. And it's not because he comes with the Excalibur. It's not because of necessarily his stats, although his stats are very good. It's because even with the nerfs applied in the Ivalice Chronicles, especially on Tactician mode, the sheer versatility that Orlando, or Cid, for those of you who get confused, brings to the table is second to none. Being able to rend priority gear when you need to is huge. Being able to tank and drain HP when you need to is awesome. Being able to completely negate a mage's ability to cast a big spell because you can drain all their MP. Rarely situational, but absolutely devastating when you're able to make it happen. And then the general suite of damage dealing abilities that you get with the Holy Knight sword skills, as well as the ability to sometimes apply status effects, makes Cid a wildly versatile character. Yes, characters like Beowulf are able to do different things than Cid, but Cid in all scenarios is going to be the most universally applicable of all the characters in this list. And that still has not changed, even with the nerfs made to him in TIC. And that is exactly what I was talking about in all of my various videos discussing the potential nerfs and the required nerfs, as I argued, for Cid in future versions of the game. Just the breadth of things he can do makes him disgusting. Even if his damage output was worse across the board than Agrias, the fact that he can do so much more than her and then still be able to get really strong gear, leveling through different jobs to get better stats, etc., would still make him disgusting. It's just completely irrefutable. I will not hear any arguments about it. By all means, share them in the comments if you want. Maybe I'll even decide to have an argument with you for a laugh, but you cannot actually change my mind on this, and I don't think anyone should be able to. Cid is in a category of his own because he takes the overall abilities of multiple characters on this list, and characters that don't even get to be on this list because you don't have any other characters that can use those abilities, Gafgarian, and puts them all into one job. That makes him extremely versatile. He's an excellent character with very strong stats, good gear options. He's Cid, and as such, the Cid tier exists. And that, my friends, is my overall comprehensive FFT, the Ivalice Chronicles, Tactician mode in particular, though applicable across the board, tier list video for our unique jobs and characters. It's been a long time coming. I wanted to get this one out sooner, but obviously circumstances have prevented that. For those of you who know what's going on in my life, you know what's going on in my life. And for those of you who don't, maybe stumble across this in the future, 2025, especially the end of it, has been a hell of a time for me. So thank you all so much to all of you who have watched, anyone who engages in any discussion, or just as part of the community in general, or just gets enjoyment from this video, because it was very nice for me to be able to get back to something a little more normal at the very least, and just talk about one of my favorite games of all time. I always enjoy it. If you do have any particular thoughts about any of the rankings in this video, because I feel pretty confident about the veracity of all of these in the general metascope of the game, do please let me know in the comments, strike up some good discussions, chat with your fellow community members and commenters, and I'll see what I can contribute to those discussions and or those arguments as we go forward. For now, though, I'm going to wrap this one up here. My name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. Lots of content to come in the future, slowly getting back into the swing of things after the whole cavalcade of calamity here, and I hope that you all look forward to it as well. For now, though, I hope that you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there, everybody. And remember, be good to each other, y'all. Bye now.